We're going to skip 1700 years now. We're going to go from classical rhetoric, ancient rhetoric, all the way to contemporary rhetoric, 20th century style. Now, there were things that happened in rhetoric between Cicero and the Romans, where we kind of left off, and the 20th century, where we're going to begin. We're not going to cover that in COM 204. If you're interested in that, COM 312, Rhetoric in the Western World, will fill in that gap for you some. We're going to skip all the way to the 20th century and talk about some of the key rhetorical ideas introduced in the 20th century. And so we've got to start with Kenneth Burke. If Aristotle was the most significant rhetorical theorist of all time, Kenneth Burke is certainly the most important rhetorical theorist of the 20th century. And one of Burke's contributions was bridging the gap between communication and rhetoric and English and literature and composition. And he really didn't care. He used the same tools for speeches and Aristotelian kinds of discourse that he used to look at plays and novels and other things like that. So Burke really joined criticism between literature and communication. And to this day, he is taught both in English departments and in communication departments. So that was one significant contribution he made. The one I want to talk about today, and we'll come back to him later, he made a lot of contributions to our understanding of rhetoric, but the one I'm going to talk about in this video is his advocacy for a balance between form and information. Let's talk about the difference in form and information and the balance that Burke wanted to have. So form, according to Burke, is the creation and satisfaction of an appetite in the reader or hearer. In other words, if you're writing or you're speaking or even your art is pleasing in form, then people want to hear more. They want to read more. They want to get to the end. That's part of what makes something have good form. The other thing about form that Burke observed is that it can bring repeated enjoyment. So it's not just consumed and then you're finished. It's something that people might enjoy again and again. So some examples of things that are form intensive are situation comedies. So if you're flipping through reruns and you come across an old Friends episode that you've seen before, if you're a fan of Friends, then you're not going to say, oh, I know how this ends. You're going to watch it again, right? Because it has pleasing form. Music is this way. Imagine what would happen to the music industry if people listened to a song one time and they were done with it. But that's not the way it works, is it? We like to, if there's a song that we like to listen to it again and again and again. It brings repeated enjoyment, and so clearly it is form intensive. Even if you know the words, you know how the song's going to end, there's no uncertainty about it. You still appreciate the way the music and the lyrics and everything work together to create something that when you start hearing it, makes you want to hear the rest of it, and then when you're finished, you want to hear it again. Excellent writing, like a magazine like The New Yorker. The kinds of things where you might cut out an article and share it with a friend, or cut it out and save it because you think, wow, that was really well done. I want to come back to that. That shows that there's a lot of excellence in form. Now, on the flip side, we have information. Information relies, not surprisingly, more heavily on facts. And once consumed, information is no longer interesting. So examples of things that are information heavy are reality TV shows. Because really, once you know who The Bachelor picks, or who survives, or who is the next American Idol, you don't necessarily want to go relive the whole deal. Like, you know the ending, you know the answer. There's nothing much left for you there. And so those kinds of shows don't show a lot of reruns because they recognize that they're information intensive. USA Today, a publication that's very information intensive. They try to represent facts in graphs, in very short articles. You think of great writers, you probably don't think of USA Today writers. They're kind of the condensed version of reporting. And then, of course, emails and texts and other messages that are ephemeral. We read them, we're done with them. My guess is you don't save, the text from your friend last week that said, "What are you doing tonight?" Like, oh, wow, that was beautiful. I want to make sure I can read that again. That doesn't even make sense. Now, Burke argues that you need to have a balance between form and information. And he was worried that information, and this was in 1931, he was worried that information might overwhelm form, that we would get so much to just the facts, let's boil it down to just the bullet points, that we would lose the things that are wonderful about communication, that make us enjoy it, that make us want to share things with other people. And so he believed there needed to be a balance. Now, where do you find that kind of a balance? Well, I think excellent writing, some of the best newspapers, the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, the Washington Post, those have some examples of stuff that has a lot of information, but it also is written in a pleasing form. So I think excellent reporting is a good example of that. Certainly excellent novels are an example of that. I'm not the kind of person that rereads novels, but I know there are people who are, and they have favorites and they go through them again and again. They know what's going to happen. There's lots of information, there's a plot, there's a storyline, but they're still willing to engage in that again. And even music, it has information. There are lyrics. There's often a story, like in a ballad or something. And even if you know that, you still want to hear it again. And so Burke argued that there needed to be balance. Movies, I think, that people rewatch over and over are good examples of this. One of my favorites of this is The Princess Bride. If you've seen it once, you've probably seen it more than once. And it didn't win Academy Awards, not critically acclaimed, kind of silly, really. But the dialogue, some of the funny characters, the fairy tale ending, even, all of these make this a pleasing movie to watch again and again. Now, because of Burke's point about how information might overwhelm form, because of that, we're going to not use PowerPoint for the rest of our discussion of contemporary rhetorical theory. So I'm going to give you the names that we're going to talk about. I hope you'll go ahead and jot those down. And then in the next video, I'm just going to talk about the concepts. No PowerPoint. Because PowerPoint is pure information, really. We're taking somebody's masterwork or novel and we're trying to boil it down to 3 bullet points, to 12 words, to a 6x6 grid. That's it. I think Burke would hate that. So, to try to emphasize the need for a balance between information and form, we're not going to try to strip things down to their pure information with PowerPoint. So in the next video, I'm going to talk about these 4 people and their concepts, but without the pure information of PowerPoint.